Today, we're gonna make this. What you just saw was inspired by episode 1 of Guillermo Del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, Lot 36. Lot 36 is a part of Del Toro's anthology of horror stories that came out in 2022 on Netflix. It's full of eerie, dark scenery that has a twisted storyline, which got me thinking, how could I remake the storage facility myself and for cheap? Because, you know, inflation? The tools I'm going to use are Unreal Engine and Blender. Unreal Engine was developed by Epic Games and is a real-time 3D game engine. Originally, it was mostly used by video game developers. However, recently it's been catching on in the film world because it speeds up the rendering process. Both Unreal Engine and Blender are completely free. I've dropped links in the description if you'd like to follow along. Before modeling anything, I'm going to choose a clip from the episode to use as a reference image that I can keep pulled up on my computer the entire time. Once I got one that I'm satisfied with, I'll open up Blender to get started. I know the garage doors are going to be the most challenging to make and will define the quality of the project, so I'll begin with them first. I'm adding a plane, then using edge loops to create faces for me to extrude like the slats that are on the doors in my reference image. To make the garage doors look more realistic, I'll bevel the edges to soften them. In the real world, truly sharp edges are uncommon, and since my goal is realism, this step is essential. After getting through these steps, the rest of creating the doors is pretty easy. It's just a matter of adding in primitive meshes and moving around their faces and vertices until they resemble the rest of the components of the door. From here, I'll export the garage door out of Blender as an FBX and bring it into an Unreal Engine scene, which I'll create using a blank film TV template. Now that I'm in Unreal Engine, I'm going to block out the basics of the scene by using a cube primitive and shaping it as the walls, floor, and ceiling. At this stage, I like to add my camera to lock in what my shot will look like pretty early on so that I give myself parameters and avoid wasting time on things that you, the viewer, won't see. Now I can take the garage doors and duplicate them all the way down the hallway. To roughly block out the lights, I'll add in some point lights. You can find all of your lights in the Place Actors window. With Unreal Engine comes access to Quixel Bridge, which gives you all of the Quixel megascans. I'm going to pop open Quixel Bridge and look at some textures to add to the environment. I'm grabbing a bunch of distressed, damaged metal and concrete textures and applying them to all the models in the scene where I think they make sense based on our reference photo. Sometimes the textures are stretched a bit when I bring them into the scene, so I'm going to play with the tiling to get them to look a bit more normal. To start tweaking the colors of the scene to match the vibe of our reference photo, I'm going to add in a post-process volume. I like to get as close to the final product as fast as I can because it helps me stay motivated. Things quickly come together in a way that's obvious. Next, I'm throwing in some volumetric fog because, you know, fog always makes things spookier, right? I'm also experimenting with chromatic aberration because it's a thing that real cameras do. I tend to use this technique in all of my scenes to get rid of that overly digital feeling. It's funny because photographers and videographers spend a lot of time trying to make their images feel perfect, while most 3D artists and animators go out of their way to make their shots imperfect and add back in that human touch that's often missing from amateur work. I'm also spending a lot of time adjusting the lights and material roughness to dial in that wet, creepy basement feeling. With things mostly locked in, I'm diving back into Blender to start modeling the archways for this hallway. For this, I'm using a plane with some subdivisions and I'm going to shape the vertices to resemble the arch. Now that I've got my basic shape in place, I'm going to extrude the plane to give it some basic depth. Subdividing a couple more times will allow me to bring it into the sculpting mode of Blender, which will help me to soften up all the edges and make it feel more natural. I'm happy with this result, so I'm going to bring it into Unreal Engine. I'm slapping some textures on the arch, replicating it, and placing arches all the way down the hallway. Next, my focus is on animating the camera and adding keyframes so that it pushes down the hallway on the x-axis. The lights are going to be how I reveal the jump scare, so I need to keyframe them to flicker on and off. This is slightly time consuming, but I don't know how to group the lights and keyframe them all together, so if you have a solution to this, feel free to comment down below. To build suspense, I'm going to tell my camera to continuously shake throughout the entire scene by creating a blueprint class. This is a classic horror movie trick to immerse the viewer in the scene. Now it's time to make the practical lighting, in this case, lamps. Starting with a basic cube, I'm going to use a series of extrudes to roughly mimic the fluorescent light fixtures in my reference photo. Back in Unreal Engine, I'm going to throw a steel texture onto the lights to give them some character. I'll duplicate them so that they're spread across the entire hallway. Using a zombie model from Sketchfab, I'll apply animations to it in Mixamo. Just like that, I've got a walking zombie to bring into my scene in Unreal Engine. First, I'm going to make sure that the zombie animation is synced up with the lights flickering, because I'm depending on the lights to reveal the zombie. To make the zombie appear slightly slimier, I'm playing around with the roughness map. With the zombie character in the scene, I can dial in the lighting better to achieve the ultimate creepiness. In Mixamo, you can control the speed that the animations happen, so while I was in it, I ran through 3 different versions to choose which one I like the best. My scene is pretty much done, so I'm going to export it and bring it into Premiere to do some basic color correction. I'm also going to add in some sound effects and music from Artlist. Now, we've got our final product. If you choose to try this yourself, remember that the little improvisations you add will be what takes it from a recreation to your own artistic interpretation. I'd encourage you to riff off of what I've made so that at the end, you'll have a unique piece of art that's all yours. I promise that you'll learn more by coloring outside the lines. Just to review, today, I used Unreal Engine and Blender to recreate my own version of a scene from Lot 36. This is a super high level breakdown, not necessarily a step-by-step tutorial. If there's anything you'd like me to explain more in the future, leave me a comment down below and let me know. As always, liking and subscribing really helps out the channel, and I can't wait to see you guys next time.